I should have known something was wrong the moment I woke up. Not because of a message. Not because of a warning. But because my chest felt heavy, like my body already understood what my heart refused to see. My name is Madison Blake, and the day I was supposed to marry Ethan Cole was the day my entire life split into two versions, the one I believed in and the one that was real. It was a Saturday in early September. The sky over Charleston was bright and impossibly blue. The kind of day brides pray for. The kind of day that looks perfect in photographs. I remember sitting at the vanity in the bridal suite, staring at myself in the mirror while the makeup artist curled my hair into soft waves. My dress hung behind me, ivory silk, fitted at the waist, flowing gently toward the floor. It looked like something out of a magazine. I looked like someone who was about to begin forever. Ethan and I had been together for 4 years. We met at a 4th of July party at a mutual friend's lake house. He was confident but not arrogant, funny but not loud. He listened when I spoke. Really listened. At least I thought he did. He told me he loved how independent I was. He said he admired my career, my ambition. He told me he had never met a woman who made him want to settle down. And I believed him. We built a life slowly. Weekend trips to Savannah. Sunday brunch traditions. Long talks about kids and where we'd eventually buy a house. He said he wanted 2 daughters. I said I wanted at least 1 boy. We laughed about baby names like it was inevitable. He traveled a lot for work. Consulting. Corporate strategy. Big clients. Late flights. I never questioned it. Why would I? He always came home. Always kissed me like he missed me. Always held me like I was his only safe place. The morning of the wedding, my mom hugged me tightly before leaving the suite. "You found a good man," she whispered. I nodded. I thought I had. My maid of honor, Sierra, was pacing around the room with nervous energy. "You're weirdly calm," she said. "Aren't you freaking out even a little?" I smiled. "No, I'm sure." I was sure. At 3:12 p.m., about 20 minutes before the ceremony, my phone buzzed on the counter. I almost ignored it. The coordinator had already warned us to silence everything. But something I still can't explain what made me pick it up. Unknown number. I hesitated, then opened the message. "I'm sorry to ruin your wedding day, but you deserve to know the truth." My heart skipped. Before I could process it, another message came through. "Ethan is already married." I actually laughed under my breath. It felt absurd. Ridiculous. Someone trying to cause drama. People do crazy things. Then my phone buzzed again. A photo loaded. It was Ethan, standing beside a woman I had never seen before. She was wearing a simple white dress. They were holding hands. An officiant stood between them. They were smiling. There was a date stamp in the corner. 2 years ago. My throat tightened. I zoomed in on his face. It was him. Not similar. Not maybe. Him. Another image followed. A marriage certificate. State of Georgia. Ethan Cole. Signature clear and unmistakable. I felt like the room tilted. Sierra noticed the color drain from my face. "What happened?" she asked. I couldn't speak. I handed her the phone. She stared at the screen. "This has to be fake," she said quickly. Too quickly. But there were more messages. "I am his wife. My name is Lauren Cole. I found your wedding website this morning. He told me he was in New York for a conference. I didn't know about you." Wife. The word echoed in my head. Wife. I suddenly replayed every business trip in my mind. Every weekend he said he had meetings. Every time he couldn't FaceTime because he was in sessions. My hands started shaking. "No," I whispered to myself. "No, this isn't real." But deep down, something cold was spreading through my chest. Sierra grabbed my shoulders. "We need to call him." "No," I said immediately. If I called him, he would lie. He would explain. He would twist it into something that made sense. I needed to see his face. I needed to watch him react. Another message came through. "I'm outside the venue." My heart slammed so hard I thought I might collapse. Outside. Right now. The ceremony music started downstairs, soft piano drifting up through the floors. Guests were being seated. My dad knocked gently on the door. 5 minutes, Maddie. 5 minutes. 5 minutes until I walked toward a man who might have another wife. I looked at myself in the mirror again. Same dress, same makeup, same bride. But I didn't feel like her anymore. I felt like someone standing on the edge of a cliff. I could run. I could cancel everything. I could hide in this room. But I didn't. Because if this was true, I wanted the truth in front of everyone. I wanted him exposed in the same place he planned to lie. I slipped my phone into the folds of my bouquet. Sierra's eyes were wide. Are you sure? No, I said honestly. But I'm not running. My dad offered me his arm. The chapel doors opened. The music swelled. Everyone stood. I walked down the aisle slowly, each step heavier than the last. And there he was. Ethan. Tall. Handsome. Perfectly composed. When he saw me, his face lit up. He smiled like the happiest man alive. But as I got closer, I noticed something subtle. A flicker in his eyes. Nervousness. Was it wedding nerves? Or fear? I reached him. He took my hands. They were damp. He leaned closer and whispered, "You look incredible." I searched his face. How do you look at someone you love and wonder if they're a stranger? The officiant began speaking about commitment and honesty. The irony almost made me dizzy. My heart was racing so violently I could hear it in my ears. Then, just as the officiant asked who gives this woman to be married, the back doors opened. A sound rippled through the crowd. I didn't have to turn around to know. I felt it. The shift. The air tightening. I slowly looked over my shoulder. A woman stood at the entrance. Mid-30s. Blonde hair pulled back. Tear-streaked face. She was holding a folder in her hands. And when her eyes locked onto Ethan, his grip on my hands loosened. His face drained of color. That was the moment I knew. Before she even spoke. Before the whisper started. I knew. Because the man who promised me forever suddenly looked like a man caught in a lie he could no longer control. She walked forward, steady but shaking. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking but loud enough to carry through the silent chapel. "But he's already my husband." Gasps filled the room. My mother covered her mouth. My father stepped forward protectively. Ethan let go of my hands completely. And I stood there in my wedding dress, realizing that the love story I believed in was never real. It was a double life. And it was about to explode in front of everyone, and explode it did. For a few seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. It felt like the entire chapel had frozen in time. The pianist stopped playing mid-note. The soft hum of the air conditioning suddenly sounded unbearably loud. I could hear my own heartbeat. Ethan stood in front of me, pale and speechless. The woman Lauren walked closer, her heels echoing against the wooden floor. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't screaming. That almost made it worse. She looked devastated, but determined. "I have proof," she said, holding up the folder in her shaking hands. A murmur spread through the guests. My mother stood up. "What is going on?" she demanded. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on Ethan. "Say something," I thought. "Tell me this isn't real. Deny it." Instead, he whispered, "Maddie, I can explain." That was the first crack. Not, "This is crazy." Not, "She's lying." Not, "I don't know her." I can explain. Lauren opened the folder and pulled out documents. She handed them to the officiant first, almost instinctively, as if this had become a courtroom instead of a wedding. Marriage certificate. Photos. Joint tax return forms. "I married him in Atlanta 3 years ago," she said, her voice trembling but controlled. "We live together. Or at least, I thought we did." Gasps again. I felt strangely calm, like I had stepped outside my own body and was watching this happen to someone else. I turned slowly toward Ethan. "Are you married?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. His eyes filled with panic. He looked at the guests, at my father, at Lauren, then back at me. "It's not what it looks like," he said. I almost laughed. "What does it look like?" I asked quietly. He ran a hand through his hair, something he always did when stressed. "It was complicated," he said. "We were separated." Lauren's head snapped toward him. "Separated," she repeated, disbelief flooding her voice. "We shared a bed last week." The room erupted in whispers. My chest tightened, but I refused to cry. I needed clarity. Did you divorce her? I asked. Silence. That was my answer. No, Lauren said firmly. He didn't. I felt the weight of my bouquet in my hands, and suddenly it seemed ridiculous. White roses symbolizing purity, while standing between two wives. Two wives. The words sounded unreal. My father stepped forward. Son, you better start talking. Ethan looked cornered. I never meant for this to happen, he said, his voice cracking. I love you, Maddie. I stared at him. Love. You love me. I repeated softly. You stood here ready to marry me while you're still legally married to someone else. It wasn't supposed to go this far, he said. Not supposed to go this far. So there was a plan. There was always a plan. Lauren let out a shaky breath. He told me he was building a future for us. That the travel was for promotions. That we were saving for a bigger house. My mind replayed every business trip again. Atlanta, Chicago, New York, consulting conferences. He wasn't traveling for work. He was dividing his time between two lives. How long? I asked him. He swallowed. 2 years, Lauren answered before he could. 2 years. That meant when he proposed to me on that beach in Santa Monica. He already had a wife waiting at home. The humiliation hit me harder than the betrayal. He had let me post engagement photos. Let me plan a wedding. Let me introduce him to extended family. All while maintaining another marriage. I stepped back from him slowly. The physical distance felt necessary. You were going to say vows, I said. You were going to promise forever. Again. He stepped toward me. Maddie, listen. I raised my hand. No. You listen. The chapel was silent. You lied to me for 4 years, I said. You looked me in the eyes. You talked about children. You let me believe I was your only future. Tears finally burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. And you, I turned to Lauren gently, you had no idea? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. None. I found your wedding website this morning. Our mutual friend sent it to me because she thought it was some kind of sick joke. The cruelty of it all was staggering. Ethan tried again. I was going to fix it. Fix it how? I demanded. He had no answer. Because there wasn't one. Bigamy. Fraud. Deception. This wasn't confusion. This was a calculated double life. My mother walked toward me carefully. Madison, she whispered, come here. But I stayed where I was. I needed him to feel this moment. I needed him to stand in front of everyone who believed in us and face what he had done. Lauren looked at me, not with anger, but with shared devastation. I'm sorry, she said again. I never wanted to hurt you. I believed her. Because her pain was real. We weren't enemies. We were victims of the same lie. I slowly slipped the engagement ring off my finger. The room seemed to inhale sharply. Ethan's eyes widened. Don't do this. Don't do this. I repeated. My voice broke then, just slightly. You already did. I placed the ring in his palm. It looked small now. Meaningless. You don't get to love 2 women at once and call it romance, I said quietly. You don't get to build 2 futures and pretend you're a victim of circumstance. He tried to grab my hand, but I stepped back again. Lauren spoke up, stronger now. We're done, Ethan. For the first time, fear crossed his face fully. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. Because his secret was no longer his. It belonged to everyone in that room. I turned to the guests. I'm sorry you all came here for a wedding, I said steadily. But at least now you know the truth. The officiant quietly stepped aside. My father came to my side. And as I walked down the aisle, not as a bride, but as a woman who refused to be deceived any longer, I felt something unexpected beneath the heartbreak. Strength behind me, voices rose. Arguments started. Lauren confronted him again. But I didn't look back, because the man I thought I loved never truly existed. And the truth had just set both of us free, even if it shattered everything first. But freedom doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels empty. When I stepped outside the chapel, the late afternoon sun hit my face, and I realized something surreal. I was still wearing my wedding dress. Cars were parked neatly along the gravel driveway. Guests were beginning to spill out behind me, whispering, staring, pretending not to stare. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, I was standing there in white silk, newly single, publicly humiliated, and trying to understand how 4 years of my life had just turned into a lie. My mom wrapped her arms around me. "Oh, Maddie," she whispered, her voice breaking. And that's when I finally cried. Not quiet tears. Not graceful ones. The kind that shake your whole body. My dad stood beside us, furious but composed. "I'm going back in there," he said under his breath. "No," I said quickly, grabbing his arm. "It's not worth it." Because it wasn't. Nothing he could say would undo what was done. Across the parking lot, I saw Lauren walk out of the chapel too. She looked as lost as I felt. For a second, we just stood there, staring at each other from a distance. 2 women in different dresses. 2 women with the same story. She walked toward me slowly. Up close, I could see the exhaustion in her face. "I'm so sorry," she said again. "I never wanted this." "I know," I replied quietly. There was no anger toward her. I couldn't afford that. All my anger belonged to him. "Did you suspect anything?" I asked gently. She nodded faintly. "He traveled more this past year. He was distant sometimes. But I thought it was stress." So did I. Stress. Deadlines. Clients. We were both given reasonable explanations. We were both trained not to question too much. Lauren looked down at my dress. "You must hate me." I shook my head. "No. I hate that he thought we'd never meet." That seemed to hit her. Because that was the truth. He never expected his 2 worlds to collide. He calculated everything: distance, schedules, excuses. What he didn't calculate was timing. Or honesty. Or the internet. Sierra came out holding my overnight bag. "Let's get you home," she said firmly. Home. The word felt strange. Which home? The apartment Ethan and I shared? The place where his clothes were still in the closet? Where his toothbrush sat next to mine? I couldn't go back there. "I'll stay with my parents," I said. Lauren hesitated. "I need to go back inside," she said. "I need answers." I understood that too. Because even after exposure, there are always questions. Why? How? Was any of it real? Before she turned away, she looked at me carefully. "If you ever want to compare timelines," she said quietly, "I think we both deserve the full picture." I nodded. We exchanged numbers. That moment felt strange, exchanging contact information with the legal wife of the man who had just tried to marry me. But that's what he had reduced us to. A shared investigation. As I got into my dad's car, I glanced back at the chapel. Through the open doors, I could see movement inside. Guests leaving. Ethan pacing. Chaos. For the first time, I saw him not as the man I loved, but as the architect of this disaster. And suddenly, he looked small. The ride home was quiet. My dress rustled every time I shifted in the seat. It felt heavy now, like it belonged to someone else's life. My phone buzzed constantly. Friends. Family. Guests. "Are you okay? What happened? Is it true?" I turned it face down. I didn't owe anyone explanations yet. When we reached my parents' house, I went straight to my childhood bedroom. Same pale blue walls. Same bookshelf. Same framed college photos. It felt safe. But safety didn't erase betrayal. I carefully unzipped the back of my dress and stepped out of it. For a second, I just stood there staring at it pooled on the floor. That dress was supposed to mark the beginning of a marriage. Instead, it marked the end of an illusion. Later that evening, Lauren called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "He's still denying parts of it," she said immediately. No greeting. No small talk. "Denying what?" I asked. "He says he was going to divorce me. That he didn't know how to tell either of us. That he loved us in different ways." I closed my eyes. Loved us in different ways. The audacity. "He doesn't get to define love anymore," I said quietly. Lauren exhaled. "I'm filing for divorce first thing Monday." There was strength in her voice now. "I support that," I replied. Then she said something that chilled me. "There's more." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "I checked our joint bank account after the ceremony," she said. "Large withdrawals. Over the past year. A new layer of deception. How much? I asked. Enough to make me question everything. My mind started racing. Venues. Ring. Trips. Had he been financing 2 lives with shared money? Had he been using her income to fund our engagement? The betrayal was no longer just emotional. It was financial. Calculated. Send me dates, I said. I'll check them against ours. We stayed on the phone for almost an hour. Matching weekends. Matching travel. Matching lies. It became disturbingly clear. When he told me he was in Denver for a conference, he was actually celebrating an anniversary with her. When he told her he was pitching in New York, he was house hunting with me. He wasn't confused. He was strategic. By the time we hung up, something inside me had shifted. The sadness was still there. But underneath it, something harder was forming. Resolve. He had embarrassed me publicly. He had manipulated 2 women. He had likely committed a crime. And he thought he could walk away with apologies and excuses. No, he underestimated us. I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling. Images replayed in my mind: his smile at the altar, his panic when Lauren walked in, the way he said, "I can explain." I finally understood something. The man I loved was real in moments. But he was also a performance. A carefully curated version of himself tailored to whoever stood in front of him. And now the performance was over. By morning, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was clear. And clarity can be dangerous, especially for someone who has been exposed. Because now, he wasn't the only one holding the story. We were, and once we started pulling at the threads, everything unraveled faster than I expected. By Monday morning, Lauren had already contacted a divorce attorney. I scheduled a consultation with one too, not because I was married, but because I needed to understand exactly what laws he had broken. Bigamy isn't just immoral. It's illegal. And suddenly, this wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about accountability. Lauren and I met in person 2 days later at a quiet coffee shop halfway between our cities. It was strange seeing her in daylight, in normal clothes, without the chaos of a ruined wedding surrounding us. She looked like me in a way that made my stomach twist. Not physically, but emotionally. Tired. Betrayed. Wiser than we had been a week ago. We spread documents across the small wooden table, printed bank statements, screenshots, timelines, travel records. And as we compared everything carefully, the full pattern emerged. He hadn't just balanced 2 relationships. He had engineered them. When he told me he needed space, one Thanksgiving because of work deadlines, he had been with her family in Atlanta. When he skipped her birthday 1 year claiming an overseas client emergency, he was on a romantic weekend with me in Napa. There was no overlap in holidays. No social media crossovers. No mutual friends. He had separated his worlds deliberately. The more we uncovered, the more calculated it became. Then Lauren found something else. A 3rd lease agreement. Dated 6 months earlier. In a neighboring state. My chest went cold. What is that? I asked. She slid it across the table. It was a rental property. Short-term furnished apartment. Signed under his name. And the address didn't match either of our homes. A staging location. A neutral space. A place where he could claim to be traveling without either of us questioning it. He wasn't just juggling, Lauren whispered. He was operating. That word stuck with me. Operating. Like it was a system. A strategy. Not emotional chaos. Not confusion. Design. My lawyer confirmed what we suspected. If Lauren filed for divorce citing fraud and bigamy, there could be criminal charges. Especially if financial deception was involved. And based on the bank withdrawals, it absolutely was. Because while he was building a wedding with me, he had been draining joint funds from her account. Engagement ring. Venue deposits. Flights. Hotel stays. He financed our future with her trust. The betrayal was layered and precise. That evening, Ethan finally called me. I hadn't heard his voice since the altar. I stared at the phone for a long time before answering. Maddie, he said immediately, like he had rehearsed it. Please let me explain everything. I stayed silent. I messed up, he continued. But I was going to fix it. I just needed time. Fix it how? I asked calmly. I was going to leave her, he said. I just didn't want to hurt anyone. The audacity of that sentence made something inside me snap into clarity. You were marrying me, I said. You already hurt everyone. He sounded frustrated now. Desperate. You don't understand the pressure I was under. No, I said evenly. I don't understand how you looked at two women and decided you deserved both. Silence. For the first time, he didn't have a smooth answer. You're ruining my life, he finally muttered. And there it was. Not remorse. Not regret. Self-pity. I didn't ruin your life, I replied quietly. You just got caught. I hung up. Lauren filed for divorce that week. She also submitted evidence to the district attorney. I gave my full statement. Not out of revenge. Out of principle. Because if he could do this to us, he could do it again. Months passed. Investigations moved slowly, but they moved. His consulting firm suspended him after internal reviews began. Financial discrepancies raised more questions than just personal misconduct. Turns out, deception tends to bleed into other areas of life. Lauren eventually sold the house they had shared. I moved into a smaller apartment across town, one that held no memories of him. Healing wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet. Therapy appointments. Long walks. Unfollowing mutual friends. Learning to sit with silence. There were nights I replayed everything. The beach proposal. The whispered promises. The way he said my name. And I would ask myself the same question over and over. Was any of it real? The answer I finally accepted was complicated. The moments felt real. But they were built on lies. And something built on lies cannot survive truth. About 8 months after the wedding that never happened, Lauren and I met again. This time not as victims comparing evidence, but as women who had rebuilt. She looked lighter, stronger. So what happens if he faces charges? I asked. She shrugged gently. Then he faces them. There was no bitterness in her voice anymore. Just acceptance. I don't hate him, she added quietly. I just don't trust him. I understood that. Hate keeps you attached. Clarity sets you free. The legal process is still ongoing. His reputation never fully recovered. But that isn't the part that matters most. What matters is this. I walked down an aisle believing I was stepping into forever. Instead, I stepped into truth. And truth hurt. It humiliated me. It shattered my plans. It forced me to rebuild. But it also saved me. Because marrying him would have meant living inside a lie I hadn't discovered yet. The day my wedding collapsed wasn't the worst day of my life. It was the day I stopped being deceived. And sometimes, the most painful exposure becomes the greatest protection. If you ever find yourself standing at an altar, literal or emotional, and something feels off, listen to it. Because intuition whispers before truth explodes. And I would rather face a shattered wedding than a lifetime of hidden betrayal. That day, I didn't become a wife. I became aware. And awareness changed everything. If this story moved you, shocked you, or made you question everything, don't just watch and scroll. Real stories like this deserve real conversations. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in her place. Would you walk away or fight back? Your voice matters here. And if you're drawn to powerful, emotional, truth-revealing stories that expose hidden lives and unforgettable betrayals, make sure you subscribe right now. Because the next story might hit even closer to home. Like this video if you believe the truth always deserves to be heard. Subscribe so you never miss the next story that could change the way you see love, trust, and loyalty. This isn't just storytelling. This is reality uncovered.